Hey, just here to do a quick review of Humans, A Brief History of How We Effed It All Up by Tom Phillips. So this book attempts to look at human history through a pessimistic lens and look at all the F-ups or missteps that humans have taken throughout history. So I will have to admit that early on, the book left a pretty bad taste in my mouth, particularly with this section that I'm going to read out for you now. While this is a history of humanity's failures, with a couple of exceptions, it's really a history of failures by men, and more often than not, white men. I don't have a problem with this on its own, because there's no denying a disproportionate amount of the mistakes in history were committed by white men. But then, within the space of a few pages, he goes on to say, when talking about the brain's tendency to make mistakes and take shortcuts. For a start, there's that ability to spot patterns. The problem here is that brains are so into spotting patterns that they start seeing them all over the place. Once the imaginary pattern you're seeing is something like, most crimes are committed by one particular ethnic group, well, it's a really big problem. Like, come on, you just did that 2 minutes ago. Remember? The white people? It seems like an attempt at gaslighting. You can reasonably make the observation that a certain ethnicity is committing X amount of crime disproportionately, but obviously they're not committing the crime because they are of that ethnicity. So the point is kind of mute in most conversations. So using the same logic, when the author brings up that most mistakes were committed by white men, the question is, so what? When people make these kind of points, they come across as very hateful and maybe even a bit racist. When they bring up these statements without any kind of justification afterwards, it comes across like there's some kind of implication. I'll use a fairly innocuous example, but if someone were to say to me, oh, all the Irish people I knew growing up used to steal things from me. Unless you make any other point, it seems the reason you think they're stealing is because they're Irish. Otherwise, why did you bring it up in the first place? Yeah, so such a stupid, hypocritical point early on in the book. Had my expectations quite low. But I took a deep breath. I said I'd give the book another chance, and I'm glad I did, because it is quite a good book. Looking at human history through a pessimistic lens like that is quite unique from the books that I've read. He talks about everything from our ancestor Lucy falling from a tree to what a mistake it was to use leaded petrol. And he does so with a kind of charming, snarky humour. Another criticism I have of the book is the chapters seem kind of meandering. There doesn't seem to be a lot tying them together, in my opinion. He'll jump from one mistake to another, and if you're not paying attention, it can kind of seem like there's not a lot of connection between these topics. So, apart from my little mini rant at the beginning, I do think it's a good book, it's fun, and it's an easy read. If you don't mind the caustic tone of the author and the pessimistic view of human history, this is definitely worth checking out.